My mother looked at my 12-day-old son and refused to hold him, claiming he was not real family. 3 days later, she posted photos hugging my sister's children, boasting about their $500 toys under a caption declaring them the real family. I did not scream. I did not beg. I simply opened my laptop and began doing the one thing they always underestimated. I put the ugly truth on the table, number by specific number. My name is Aurelia Everhart, and for the last 12 days, I had been existing in the strange, suspended reality that is the immediate postpartum period. My world had shrunk to the four walls of my living room in the Chicago suburbs, a space that smelled faintly of sour milk, witch hazel, and the piercing, antiseptic scent of hand sanitizer. I was exhausted in a way that felt cellular, my bones heavy and my mind wrapped in a thick gray fog. But beneath that exhaustion, there was a hum of triumph. I looked down at the bassinet where my son slept. He was real. He was here. Getting him here had been a war. It had taken 3 years, 2 rounds of IVF, 1 heartbreaking miscarriage, and a depleting of our savings that Grant and I never spoke about above a whisper. My body felt like a battlefield that had finally signed a peace treaty, leaving behind stretch marks, surgical scars, and a profound, terrifying tenderness. I was sore. I was leaking. I was happier than I had ever been in my life. And then my mother, Diane Everhart, rang the doorbell. She had not visited the hospital. She claimed the parking was too expensive, and the visitation hours did not align with her schedule. Although I knew she had spent that same Tuesday afternoon getting her highlights touched up at a salon 40 minutes away, I had let it slide. I was too tired to fight, and honestly, a part of me was used to it. I had spent 34 years making excuses for Diane, translating her neglect into a language that hurt less. Grant opened the door. I stayed seated on the sofa, adjusting the nursing pillow across my lap. I heard the click of her heels on the hardwood before I saw her. Diane walked in, bringing with her a gust of cold October air and the overwhelming scent of floral perfume that instantly warred with the baby smell of the room. "It is stuffy in here," was the first thing she said. She did not look at me. She did not look at the bassinet. She looked at the windows. Her lips pursed in that familiar expression of distaste she reserved for anything she could not control. "Hi, Mom," I said. My voice sounded thin, even to my own ears. "Thanks for coming." She walked past me, running a finger along the edge of the dining table as if checking for dust. "I cannot stay long. Aurelia, the traffic on the Kennedy was absolute murder. I do not know why you and Grant insisted on buying so far out. It is inconvenient for everyone." Grant, who was standing by the kitchen island pouring a glass of water, stiffened. He set the pitcher down with a little too much force. "We like the neighborhood, Diane. It has good schools." Diane waved a hand dismissively. "Schools are years away, if you can afford them, that is." She finally turned to look at me, her eyes scanning my messy bun and the stained oversized t-shirt I was wearing. She did not ask how I was feeling. She did not ask about the delivery, which had been an emergency C-section that left me unable to drive for 6 weeks. "Well," she said, clasping her hands around her designer purse, "where is it? It, not him, not Leo." "He is sleeping," I said, nodding toward the bassinet next to my knees. "He just went down." Diane took 2 steps forward, peering over the edge of the bassinet from a safe distance, as if looking at an exhibit in a museum that she found mildly distasteful. She did not smile. There was no cooing, no softening of the eyes, none of the grandmotherly warmth I had seen her lavish on my sister Brielle's children for the last 5 years. Leo stirred. He let out a small, bird-like squeak and shifted, his tiny fist punching the air. My heart swelled. Instinctively, I reached in and scooped him up. I wanted her to hold him. I needed her to hold him, I thought, with a desperate naivety that makes me cringe now. That the moment she felt his weight, the ice would break. I thought biology would override her personality. "Do you want to hold him?" I asked, extending my arms. I winced slightly as the movement pulled at my stitches. "Support his head. He is still a little wobbly." Diane did not move her arms. She actually took a step back. Her heels clicked sharp and loud against the floor. She looked at Leo, then at me, with a flat, unblinking stare. "No," she said. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. "No," I repeated, thinking I had misheard. "Mom, just for a second. He is your grandson." Diane adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder. She smoothed down the front of her coat, avoiding my gaze. "I am not comfortable with that. Aurelia, you know how I am with germs. And besides," she trailed off, looking around the room as if searching for an exit. "Besides what?" Grant asked. His voice was low, dangerous. He had moved from the kitchen and was standing behind the sofa now, his hand resting protectively on my shoulder. Diane sighed, as if we were the ones being difficult. "Look, let us be honest. It is a little different, isn't it, with science, and the donors or whatever you had to do?" I felt the blood drain from my face. Leo was warm against my chest, but I felt suddenly freezing. "Grant and I used IVF, Mom. It is still our genetics. He is still my son. He is still your grandson." Diane gave a tight, pitying smile. "Technically, perhaps, but it feels clinical, artificial." She waved her hand vaguely at the baby. "I am just saying, I do not feel that connection. I cannot force it. He does not feel like a real family." The silence that followed was deafening. It was not empty. It was full of the sound of something breaking. I looked at my mother. I saw the woman who had never attended my science fairs because she had a headache, but never missed Brielle's cheerleading tryouts. I saw the woman who had told me my infertility was likely caused by my stressful career, implying I had brought it on myself. "Not real family," I whispered. "Do not be dramatic." "Aurelia," she snapped, checking her watch. "I came to see him. Didn't I? I did my duty, but do not expect me to play pretend. It is better for everyone if we are honest about boundaries." She turned to the door. "I have to go. Brielle needs help with the twins' costume fitting. Goodbye. Aurelia, get some sleep. You look terrible." And then she was gone. Grant and I stayed in that position for a long time, me clutching Leo, him gripping my shoulder. We did not scream. We did not throw things. The cruelty was so precise, so surgical, that it left us in shock. "Did that just happen?" Grant asked eventually, his voice cracking. "Yes," I said. I looked down at Leo. He was perfect. He had my nose and Grant's chin. He was the most real thing in the universe. "Yes, it did." I thought the worst part was over. I thought the rejection was the climax. I was wrong. 48 hours later, the fog of shock had begun to lift. Replaced by a dull, aching anger, I was sitting up in bed, nursing Leo, scrolling through social media on my phone to keep myself awake. It was 3 a.m. The house was silent. Then the notification popped up. Diane Everhart added 4 new photos. My thumb hovered over the screen. I knew I should not look. I knew it would be salt in the wound, but I tapped it anyway. The first photo was a selfie of my mother. She was beaming. Her face lit up with a genuine joy I had not seen in years. She was kneeling on the floor of my sister Brielle's living room, in her arms. She was squeezing Brielle's 2 children, my niece and nephew, aged 4 and 5. They were laughing. The room was chaotic and bright, but it was the second photo that made my breath hitch. It was a close-up of 2 massive boxes, 2 ride-on electric cars, miniature luxury SUVs, the kind that cost a fortune. I zoomed in on the price tag visible in the corner of one box. $500, $1,000 total. This was from the woman who had told me 2 days ago that she could not buy a shower gift for Leo because her retirement fund was taking a hit in this market. I swiped to the caption. The text was short. It was not just a caption. It was a manifesto. "Nothing beats a Sunday with my grandbabies. Spoiling them is my job, so grateful for these moments. Blood is everything. They are a real family. Blessed grandma life. They are a real family." She had used the exact same phrase she had said to my face. It was not a slip of the tongue. It was a public declaration. She was drawing a line in the sand for all our relatives, all her friends, all the neighbors to see. Brielle's children, conceived naturally, living 10 minutes away, were the inner circle. Leo and I were the outcasts. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and angry. It was not just about the money. I did not need her money. Grant and I did fine. It was a public humiliation. It was the deliberate erasure of my son's existence. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was my father, Robert. For a split second, a foolish hope flared in my chest. Maybe he had seen the post. Maybe he was calling to apologize, to tell me he had made her take it down, to tell me he was ashamed. I answered on the first ring. Dad. Aurelia. His voice was gruff, impatient. Are you up? I am feeding the baby, I said. It is 3 a.m. Listen, he said, skipping the pleasantries. Your mother is upset. I nearly laughed. She is upset, Dad. She came to my house, told me my son is not real family, and then posted that hateful caption on Facebook. Do you have any idea how that feels? Robert sighed, a long, weary sound that implied I was the one being unreasonable. You are being sensitive, Aurelia. You know how she is. She did not mean it like that. She is just proud of Brielle's kids. She literally wrote, they are a real family. Dad, what other way is there to take it? She meant they are close, he argued. Physically close. You are reading too much into it because of the hormones. You are emotional right now. I am not emotional, I said, my voice shaking despite myself. I am rational. She spent $1,000 on toys for them after telling me she was broke. She refused to hold Leo. Stop counting other people's money. Aurelia, it is unbecoming, he snapped. The softness in his voice vanished. Look, Brielle called. She saw you viewed the story but didn't like it. She thinks you are going to make a scene. Do not do that. Your sister is under a lot of stress right now with the kids in the house. Do not make this about you. I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the hum of the silence on the other end. Brielle is under stress, I repeated flatly. I just had major abdominal surgery and have a newborn. You have always been the strong one, Robert said, as if that was a compliment and not a curse. You handle things. Brielle needs us more. Just let it go. Do not comment on the post. Do not cause drama. We will come by next month. Maybe, when things settle down. Next month, I said. Yeah, get some rest. He hung up. I lowered the phone. Leo had fallen asleep against my chest, his breathing rhythmic and soft. I looked at his face, so peaceful, completely unaware that his grandfather had just dismissed his mother's pain to protect his aunt's feelings. You have always been the strong one. It was the code word they had used my entire life. Strong meant convenient. Strong means we do not have to worry about you. Strong means you get nothing because you do not ask for it. I looked at the phone again. The screen was dark now. My sadness began to crystallize. It hardened, cooling rapidly into something sharp and useful. I was done being the strong one who absorbed the blows. I was done being the clinical daughter. If they wanted to talk about what was real, I could do that. I carefully unlatched Leo and placed him back in his bassinet. I swaddled him tight, smoothing the blanket over his chest. Then, I walked out of the bedroom and down the hall to my home office. My laptop sat on the desk. I opened it. The blue light flooded the dark room. I logged into my work cloud, but not to work. I worked for Crestview Risk and Compliance in the Chicago Loop. My entire career was built on finding patterns, detecting fraud, and identifying anomalies in data that everyone else missed. I was paid a very high salary to notice when numbers did not add up. My family thought I was just good with computers. They thought I was a boring corporate drone. They had no idea that my brain was wired to see the invisible threads that connected actions to consequences. Dad had told me to stop counting other people's money. That was a mistake, because now, that was exactly what I was going to do. I opened a new spreadsheet. I typed in the header in bold. Black letters, the real family index. I began to type. I started with the date of the toys, October 24th. 2 items, $1,000. Then I went back. I remembered the car Brielle had bought last year, the loan Mom had mentioned slipping her, the vacation photos from Cabo when Brielle was supposedly unemployed. I did not have access to their bank accounts, not yet, but I had access to the public record of their lives, which they so foolishly broadcasted, and I had a memory like a steel trap for every time my father had complained about his finances while simultaneously funding Brielle's lifestyle. I was going to build a timeline. I was going to overlay their cries of poverty with their spending on the golden child. And I was going to find out exactly why $1,000 on toys was possible when a flight to visit me was too expensive. I looked at the blinking cursor. They wanted to define family fine. I would define it for them. I typed one final note at the bottom of the screen, a promise to myself and to the sleeping baby in the other room. I do not need them to hold my son. I need them to hold the consequences. The cursor on my screen blinked with a steady, rhythmic pulse, waiting for me to input the first piece of data into the spreadsheet I had titled The Real Family Index. But before I could type a single number, my mind drifted away from the blue light of the laptop and pulled me backward, dragging me through the muddy waters of the past 3 decades. My mother's words about real family were not a sudden thunderstorm appearing out of a clear blue sky. They were the inevitable landslide caused by years of slow erosion. To understand why I was sitting in the dark at 4 a.m, plotting a forensic accounting of my own parents, you have to understand the mythology of the Everhart household. In our house, there were 2 distinct roles, cast before we were even old enough to read the script. I was the sturdy oak tree, expected to weather any storm without complaining. Brielle was the orchid, beautiful but so fragile that the slightest breeze required a family emergency meeting. I remembered a Tuesday afternoon when I was 14 years old. I had come home from school with a 98 on my biology midterm and a scraped knee from volleyball practice. Brielle, who was 12 at the time, had come home in tears because a girl in her homeroom had made fun of her shoes. My mother, Diane, had walked right past me. Stepping over my gym bag to rush to the sofa where Brielle was sobbing, she spent 2 hours comforting her, making hot chocolate, and calling the other girl's mother to complain. I cleaned my own knee in the bathroom sink with peroxide and a cotton ball, wincing as it bubbled white over the raw skin. When I finally showed my mother my test paper at dinner, she glanced at it while spooning mashed potatoes onto Brielle's plate. "That is nice, Aurelia," she had said, not looking up. "But please keep your voice down. Your sister has had a traumatic day." That was the baseline. My successes were expected and therefore invisible. Brielle's failures were tragedies that required a collective rescue effort. As we grew older, the gap widened. I worked summers at a local library to save for a car. I drove a 10-year-old sedan that smelled permanently of stale coffee and overheated oil. When the transmission finally died during my junior year of college, my father, Robert, gave me a lecture on vehicle maintenance and told me I would have to figure it out because money does not grow on trees. I took an extra shift at the campus bookstore and rode the bus for 6 months. 2 years later, Brielle totaled her car because she was texting while driving. It was completely her fault. She walked away without a scratch. But she called Dad hysterically crying from the side of the road. By the following weekend, she was driving a certified pre-owned SUV. We could not let her drive something unsafe, Dad had told me when I asked about it during a Thanksgiving visit. She is not as street smart as you, Aurelia. She needs the extra steel around her. You understand. I understood. I always understood. Being street smart was just a polite way of saying I was not worth the investment of protection. The dynamic calcified when I met Grant. We got married in a small, elegant ceremony that we paid for ourselves because my parents were stretched thin that year coincidentally. The same year Brielle decided to go back to grad school for a degree she never finished. When Grant and I bought our house in the suburbs, 40 minutes away from my parents, Diane acted as if I had announced I was moving to Mars. "You are leaving us," she had said, wiping a non-existent tear during our housewarming party. That is what happens. You raise them, they get successful, and they leave you behind. Meanwhile, Brielle still lived 20 minutes from them. She dropped her laundry off at Mom's house on Sundays. She ate dinner there 3 times a week. She borrowed Dad's credit card for emergencies that looked suspiciously like trips to Sephora. And the narrative shifted again. Brielle was not dependent. She was loyal. She was the devoted daughter who stayed close to the nest. I was the cold, career-focused defector who only cared about her job in the city. Then came the grandchildren. Brielle had her first son, Noah, 4 years ago. The family exploded into a frenzy of celebration. My parents bought a crib, a stroller, and a high chair to keep at their house. They hosted a baby shower that cost more than my wedding reception, every weekend. Social media was flooded with pictures of Nana and Pop Pop at the zoo, at the park, at the pumpkin patch. I was happy for her. I really was. I love my nephew. But I also remember my role in that timeline. I was the one who arrived early to set up the decorations for the shower. I was the one who stayed late to break down the tables and load the gifts into Brielle's car because she was too swollen to lift anything. I remember standing in the kitchen, scraping icing off plates, while the rest of the family sat in the living room opening presents. I could hear them laughing. I could hear my mother saying, "Oh, look at this tiny outfit. He is going to be the most spoiled baby in Illinois." I was the staff. I was the logistics coordinator. I was the background character who made sure the lighting was good for the main event. But the moment that truly severed the cord, the moment that made the real family comment inevitable, happened 18 months ago. Grant and I had been trying to conceive for over a year. The doctors were using words like diminished reserve and unexplained factors. We were staring down the barrel of IVF, a process that is as expensive as it is emotionally brutal. Our insurance covered a portion, but we were looking at out-of-pocket costs that equaled a down payment on a second home. We were short. We needed about $15,000 to start the cycle immediately, or we would have to wait another 6 months to save up. And at my age, 6 months felt like 6 years. I swallowed my pride. I did the thing I swore I would never do. I asked for help. I sat at my parents' dining room table, my hands shaking in my lap. I laid out the spreadsheet, yes. Even then, I used spreadsheets. I showed them our savings, our budget, and the gap. I asked for a loan, not a gift. A loan. I offered to sign a promissory note with interest. My father looked at the papers. My mother looked out the window. "Aurelia," my father said, using his reasonable man voice, "we would love to help. You know that. But our liquidity is just not there right now. The market has been volatile. We have to be careful with our retirement." "I understand," I said, fighting back tears. "I just thought, since I have never asked for anything—" "You are so strong," my mother interjected, reaching across the table to pat my hand. Her skin felt dry and papery. "You and Grant always figure it out. You are resourceful. If we give you this money, it might cripple us if something happens. You wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you?" I left that day feeling ashamed for even asking. I felt greedy. I felt like a failure. Grant and I took out a high-interest personal loan instead. We ate ramen and canceled our streaming services and did not buy new clothes for a year. We figured it out, just like they said we would. 3 weeks after they denied me the loan, Brielle pulled into my driveway. She was driving a brand-new, white luxury crossover. It still had the paper dealer plates on it. "Look," she squealed, jumping out of the driver's seat. "Isn't it gorgeous?" The lease on my old car was up, and Mom and Dad said I needed something with more trunk space for the stroller. They put down the deposit and co-signed for me. Can you believe it? I stood in my driveway, the wind whipping my hair across my face, staring at the shiny chrome emblem on the front of the car. "They put down the deposit?" I asked. My voice sounded hollow. "Yeah, like $5,000 or something, and they are helping with the monthly payments for the first year until I get my freelance business off the ground. They are literal angels. $5,000 down, plus payments. That was easily $10,000 committed in the first year alone. They had looked me in the eye and told me they had no liquidity to help create their grandchild. Less than a month later, they found the money to ensure Brielle looked good in the school drop-off line. It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. It was about the value of the person asking for it. In their eyes, my struggle was a character-building exercise. Brielle's struggle was a systemic failure that required a bailout. I looked at the car. I looked at my sister's happy, oblivious face, and for the first time, I realized that I wasn't just the independent one. I had an insurance policy. I was the one they didn't have to worry about, so they could pour all their resources into the black hole that was my sister's life. They didn't love me less, exactly. They loved me conditionally. My membership in the family was contingent on me being useful, silent, and self-sufficient. I was allowed to be an Everhart as long as I didn't cost them anything emotionally or financially, Brielle. She was allowed to be an Everhart simply because she existed. The memory faded, bringing me back to the cold, dark reality of my home office. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the streetlights of our quiet suburban cul-de-sac cast long orange shadows against the snow that had started to fall. In the distance, the faint, amber glow of the Chicago skyline stained the horizon. I thought about Leo sleeping in the other room. I thought about the way Diane had looked at him like he was a biology experiment, not a person. I had spent my whole life trying to earn my way into the real family club. I had tried to buy my ticket with good grades, with a stable career, with a polite marriage, with silence. I had thought that if I was just perfect enough, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Brielle. But you cannot earn what someone is not willing to give, and you cannot buy respect from people who only value you when you are free. The sadness that had been weighing down my chest for days began to lift, but it wasn't replaced by happiness. It was replaced by a clarity as sharp and cold as the ice forming on the window pane. I wasn't the daughter they cherished. I was just the daughter who kept the books balanced so they could afford to cherish the other one. I turned back to the laptop. The blank spreadsheet was waiting. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to talk about value? Let us calculate the exchange rate." I sat down and began to type. The blue light of the laptop screen was the only source of illumination in the room, casting long, sharp shadows against the nursery walls. I sat in the nursing chair, my body aching in places I did not know existed. Staring at the Facebook post that had effectively severed my relationship with my mother, I was not just looking at the photo anymore, I was dissecting it. In my line of work at Crestview, we call this open source intelligence. It is amazing what people tell you when they think they are just bragging. I zoomed in on the 2 electric cars. They were not generic store-brand toys. I recognized the logo on the grille. They were the Ranger Rover replicas, the specific model that had gone viral on parenting TikTok 3 weeks ago because a famous influencer had bought them for her triplets. I opened a new tab and searched for the model. Retail price, $499.99, plus tax, plus shipping. My mother had dropped over $1,000 in a single afternoon on toys that were technically rated for ages 6 and up, for children who were 4 and 5. These were not gifts for my niece and nephew. These were props. They were purchased for the aesthetic, for the photo opportunity, for the specific purpose of signaling wealth and abundance to an audience of 350 Facebook friends. I moved my cursor to the bottom of the post. The tagging was aggressive. Usually, my mother just tagged Brielle, but this time, the list was exhaustive. She had tagged my father. She had tagged Brielle's husband. But then she had gone further. She had tagged Great Aunt Linda in Florida. She had tagged my cousins in Ohio. She had tagged the pastor's wife from her church. It was a roll call. It was a digital press release sent to every stakeholder in the Everhart family network. She was defining the in-group. By publicly declaring this cluster of people as the real family, she was silently, but violently, excluding the one person she had notably omitted, me. My phone buzzed on the small side table, vibrating against the baby monitor. It was a family group chat. The thread was titled, Everhart Clan. I watched the messages roll in. feeling a detached sort of nausea. Brielle sent a video. I did not want to watch it, but I needed the data. I pressed play. The video showed my nephew crashing the electric car into the side of my parents' garage, while my mother laughed in the background. Her laugh sounded bright, performative, loud enough to be picked up by the microphone. Diane. Look at him go. A natural driver, just like his pop-pop Brielle heart emoji, teary-eyed emoji. We are so lucky. Thank you. Nana and Pop-Pop best Sunday ever. Dad. Glad you guys liked them. You deserve it. I waited. I sat there for 10 minutes, watching the 3 dots appear and disappear as other relatives chimed in. Cousin Mike sent a thumbs up. Aunt Linda sent a blessed sticker. Not a single person asked about Leo. I had given birth 12 days ago. I had undergone major surgery. I was currently sitting in the dark with a newborn who was struggling to latch. The Everhart clan was discussing the battery life of a toy car. The silence around my name was not an oversight. It was a discipline. My mother had set the tone. We are focusing on Brielle, and everyone else had fallen in line, either out of habit or fear of rocking the boat. The door to the nursery creaked open. Grant stood there, silhouetted by the hallway light. He was holding 2 mugs of decaf tea. He looked tired, his hair standing up in tufts, deep circles etched under his eyes. He walked over and set the tea on the table, then looked at my screen. He saw the photo. He saw the group chat. Aurelia, he said, his voice rough with sleep and frustration. Stop. I am not doing anything, I said, my eyes not leaving the screen. You are hurting yourself, Grant said. He knelt down beside the chair, putting a hand on my arm. His grip was warm and grounding. Honey, please, block them, mute the chat, delete the app. We do not need this poison. We have Leo. We have our own life. Let them play their little games. If I block them, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, then I am the one who ran away. Who cares? Grant asked. Let them say you ran away. Let them say whatever they want. We will be happy. I turned to look at him. Grant, you do not understand Diane. If I cut contact now, without explanation, without proof, she will spin this. She will tell everyone I am having a breakdown. She will say I am jealous of Brielle. She will say I am unstable, and that is why she cannot be around the baby. She will turn herself into the victim who was shut out by her cruel daughter. Grant rubbed his face with his free hand. So what? Let her lie. We know the truth. The truth does not matter if it is only known by 2 people in a dark room, I countered. I'm not going to let her erase my son, and I'm not going to let her rewrite history. I turned back to the laptop. I need to understand the mechanism. I need to know why she bought those cars. Brielle is supposedly broke. Mom and Dad are supposedly watching their liquidity. So where did the money come from? And why was it so important to post it now? 3 days after refusing to hold Leo. Grant sighed. Standing up. He knew that tone. It was the tone I used when I found a discrepancy in a compliance audit at work. It was the tone that meant I was not going to sleep until the equation was balanced. Just, do not let them break you, Aurelia, he said softly. He kissed the top of my head and went back to the bedroom. I was alone again. I started taking screenshots. I did not just save the photos. I captured the timestamps. I captured the list of people who had liked the post. I captured the comment section where my mother replied to a neighbor saying, yes, grandbabies are the only legacy that matters. I was building a repository. I knew exactly how these family feuds played out. In 6 months, when I finally confronted them, Diane would gasp and say, I never said that, or you are remembering it wrong. Honey, you were on all those painkillers. I was creating a reality that could not be gaslit. Then, a notification popped up on my phone. It was not from the group chat. It was a direct message on Messenger. My stomach tightened. It was from Aunt Janice. Janice was my father's younger sister. She lived 2 towns over and mostly kept to herself. She was the family Switzerland neutral, pleasant, and largely disengaged from Diane's drama. She rarely messaged me. Janice. Hi, honey. I hope you and the baby are recovering well. I just wanted to check in. I stared at the blinking cursor. It felt loaded. Janice never checked in. Aurelia. We are doing okay. Aunt Janice. Leo is sleeping. 3 bubbles appeared. Then it disappeared. Then it appeared again. She was typing, deleting, and retyping. That was never a good sign. Janice. Listen, I probably shouldn't say anything, but it hasn't sat right with me all day. I saw your mom at the grocery store this morning. I asked her about the new baby. My heart hammered against my ribs. Aurelia. What did she say, Janice? She was very dismissive. She told me not to get too attached because she wasn't sure how much you would be bringing him around. But Aurelia, she said something else. She implied that because you used science, the baby isn't really hers, she said. It is basically like adoption, isn't it? It is not the same bloodline. The air left my lungs. It was one thing to say it to my face in the privacy of my living room. That was cruel. But this was a campaign. My mother was actively seeding a lie throughout the extended family. She was telling people that Leo was not biologically related to the Everharts. She knew that our IVF process used my eggs and Grant's sperm. She knew biology perfectly well. We had walked her through every agonizing step, but the truth did not serve her purpose. If Leo was fully her grandson, then her refusal to buy him a gift while buying Brielle's kids luxury cars was monstrous. It was indefensible favoritism. But if Leo was basically adopted, if he was not the same bloodline, then her distance was justified. She was creating a permission structure for her own neglect. She was giving herself a moral pass to discard my son, I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. Aurelia. She knows that isn't true. Janice. He is biologically ours. Janice. I assume so. But you know how convincing she can be. She makes it sound like she is the one suffering, like she is trying to accept it, but it is hard for her. I just thought you should know what is being said. Aurelia. Thank you for telling me. I set the phone down face down on the desk. The plastic clattered loudly against the wood. The coldness that washed over me was absolute. This was not just a bad mother having a bad day. This was a calculated public relations strategy. She was managing her reputation at the expense of my son's identity. She was delegitimizing his existence to cover her financial tracks, because that was the only logical conclusion. If she admitted Leo was her real grandson, she would be expected to support him the way she supported Brielle's kids. And for some reason, a reason I had not yet discovered, she did not want to, or she could not. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it Real Family Timeline. I dragged the screenshot of the Facebook post into it. I dragged the screenshot of the group chat silence. I took a screenshot of Aunt Janice's conversation and dragged that in too. Then I opened a blank document. I needed to see the pattern. I needed to see the money. If Diane wanted to make this about blood, she was going to lose. Biology is messy. Biology is subject to interpretation and feelings. But math is pure. Math does not have feelings. Math does not lie to make itself look better at a dinner party. I looked over at the baby monitor. Leo shifted in his sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling. He was innocent. He was perfect. And he had been born into a war zone. Okay, Mom, I whispered to the screen. You say he is not blood fine. Let us see if you can explain where the money went. I cracked my knuckles, the sound sharp in the quiet room. If you want to judge by blood, I will judge by the ledger. I started typing. My office is located on the 24th floor of a glass tower in the Chicago Loop, overlooking the gray, churning waters of Lake Michigan. I work for a firm called Crestview Risk and Compliance. My official title is Senior Analyst, but in the break room, they call me the Bloodhound. My job is not to look at the numbers people want me to see. My job is to look at the space between the numbers. I look for the ghost patterns, the slight deviations in spending that indicate embezzlement, money laundering, or simply a company bleeding out from a wound it refuses to acknowledge. I am very, very good at my job. When I sat down at my desk that morning, Sleep-deprived and fueled by a single cup of lukewarm coffee, I did not log into the Crestview secure server. Instead, I opened a blank Excel spreadsheet on my personal laptop. I was not looking for corporate fraud today. I was looking for a domestic hemorrhage. I cracked my knuckles and closed my eyes for a moment, visualizing the banking interface of the First National Bank of Illinois. 6 months ago, my father, Robert, had called me in a panic. He was convinced the bank was stealing pennies from him via hidden service fees. He had forced me to sit down with him, log into his account, and export 3 years of transaction history so I could audit the bank for him. I had done it. I had combed through every line item. There was no theft, of course. He had simply subscribed to 3 different streaming services he did not know how to use and had forgotten to cancel a wine club membership. But I had kept the data. And because my father is a creature of habit who uses the same password for everything, a combination of his dog's name and his wedding anniversary, and had authorized my device as a trusted browser during our audit session. I still had a window. I did not need to hack him. I just needed to walk through the door he had left open. I logged in. The 2-factor authentication pinged his phone, I assumed, but he was at his weekly golf game. He would ignore it or assume it was a glitch. I had about 5 minutes before he might check. I downloaded the updated transaction history for the last 12 months and logged out. Now, the real work began. I split my screen. On the left, I had the raw data of my parents' checking and savings accounts. On the right, I had Brielle's Instagram and Facebook feeds. To the untrained eye, these were 2 separate worlds. To me, they were a cause and effect diagram. I started with the most recent entry, October 24th, the toys. Right screen photo of 2 electric Range Rovers, value approximately $1,000. Left screen, debit card transaction at Toy World Superstore for $1,082.50, confirmed. My mother had not used cash or a gift card. She had swiped the debit card 3 days after telling me they were feeling the pinch of inflation. I moved backward in time. September 12th. Right screen Brielle posts a photo of herself holding a grande pumpkin spice latte with the caption, "New hair, new me, fall vibes." Her hair is freshly dyed a complex, expensive blonde balayage. Left screen, September 11th. A Zelle transfer to Brielle Everhart for $350. Note, treat yourself. August 3rd. Right screen. Brielle posts a photo of her son's back-to-school haul, new Nike sneakers, a designer backpack, 3 sets of uniforms. Left screen, August 2nd, check number 402 clears for $600. I began to type faster, entering the data into my spreadsheet. I created columns: date, event, claimed source, actual source, amount. I found a recurring transaction on the 1st of every month, like clockwork. A transfer of $1,800 went from my parents' account to Brielle. It was labeled simply, "Help, $1,800. That was a mortgage payment in some parts of the country. That was more than my monthly student loan payment, which I had paid off myself without asking them for a dime. I multiplied it out. Over the last 2 years, that monthly stipend alone amounted to $43,200. But it was the irregularities that were truly staggering. I scrolled back to last Christmas. Brielle had hosted. I remembered the dinner well. She had served prime rib and expensive champagne. She had bragged about how well her freelance consulting was going. My parents had beamed, telling me, "See, your sister is finally finding her footing." I looked at the bank statement from December 20th. Transfer to Brielle, $4,000. Memo. Christmas host. She had not paid for that dinner. They had paid her to host them, and then praised her for her hospitality. I worked through the lunch hour. My tea went cold. My eyes burned. The spreadsheet grew longer and longer. A scrolling indictment of financial enabling. I found the car down payment, $5,000. I found the emergency vet bill for her dog, $2,000. I found a bailout for a credit card she had maxed out, $8,500. When I summed the total for the last 36 months, the number at the bottom of the column made me physically recoil. $112,000, $450, $112,000. I sat back in my chair, staring at the number. My parents had given my sister over $100,000 in 3 years. This was the same time period where they had told me they could not help with my IVF, the same time period where my father had lectured me on the price of the stroller I bought for Leo, the same time period where my mother had complained that gas prices were preventing her from driving up to visit me. They were not broke. They were just spending their entire disposable income on maintaining the illusion of Brielle's success. But then, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I was looking at the source of the funds. The monthly $1,800 usually came from my father's pension deposit, but the big chunks, the $8,000 for the credit card, the $5,000 for the car, did not come from savings. They came from a transfer titled HELOC Draw. I froze. A HELOC is a home equity line of credit. It means borrowing money against the value of your house. It is essentially a second mortgage. You only touch your home equity for 3 things: major renovations that increase value, catastrophic medical emergencies, or a desperate attempt to avoid bankruptcy. My parents had paid off their house 10 years ago. It was their pride and joy. It was their retirement safety net. And now, according to this statement, they were stripping the equity out of the walls, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, and handing it to Brielle. I cross-referenced the dates. The $5,000 draw for Brielle's car happened 2 weeks after my father retired. The $8,000 draw for her credit card happened the same month my mother complained about the cost of her blood pressure medication. They were not just giving her their extra cash, they were liquidating their future. They were dismantling their own financial security to keep Brielle afloat. And why I looked at Brielle's social media again, the perfect clothes, the smiling kids, the boss babe captions about her vague business ventures. There was a dissonance here, even with the subsidies. Brielle's spending was aggressive. The math did not quite work. $100,000 helps, but it does not sustain a luxury lifestyle for a family of 4 in this economy unless there is other income. But Brielle did not have a job. Her husband worked part-time at a gym. So where was the rest of the money going? I looked at the timing of the transfers again. The big bailouts always happened right after Brielle posted something about a new business launch. January. Launching my exclusive mentorship program. 2 weeks later, parents transfer $3,000. May starting my dropshipping journey. 3 weeks later, parents transfer $2,000. A hypothesis began to form in my mind. A dark, ugly hypothesis. Brielle wasn't just bad with money. She was drowning. These weren't gifts. These were rescue buoys thrown to someone who was frantically treading water. My parents weren't just favoring her, they were held hostage. When my mother said, "She is the real family," and "they are the only legacy," she wasn't just being cruel to me, she was doubling down on her investment. She had bought so much stock in the Brielle is a success narrative that she could not afford to let it crash. If Brielle failed, my parents lost their house. They had to believe she was the real family, because they had mortgaged their reality to support her fantasy. I felt a strange mix of vindication and horror. I clicked Save As. I named the file simply The Ledger. Then I clicked Print. The laser printer in the corner of my home office whirred to life. It spat out 12 pages of dense, undeniable data. I picked up the warm stack of paper. The weight of it felt significant. This was not just paper. This was the autopsy of my relationship with my parents. I found a large manila envelope. I slid the papers inside. I took a thick black marker and wrote on the front of the envelope. I did not write financial records. I did not write for Dad. I wrote, "The truth does not need to be held." I placed the envelope on the corner of my desk, next to the framed ultrasound picture of Leo. "You said you couldn't afford to help us," I whispered to the empty room. "You said you were broke. You were right. You are broke. And now, I know exactly who broke you." I turned off the laptop. The room plunged back into darkness. But for the first time in days, I did not feel confused. I felt armed. I sat across from Harper Sloan in a quiet corner of a coffee shop 3 blocks from the Crestview office. Harper was technically my direct supervisor, but in reality, she was the closest thing I had to a mentor. She was a woman in her late 50s with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and a gaze that could peel the paint off a wall. She did not do warm and fuzzy, which was exactly why I had called her. I pushed the manila envelope across the table. Harper didn't open it immediately. She just rested her hand on it, her manicured nails tapping a slow rhythm against the paper. "So," she said, her voice dry, "let me get this straight. Your mother tells you your son is not a real family because of IVF. 3 days later, she buys your sister's kids toys worth $1,000, and you found out your parents are stripping the equity out of their home to fund your sister's lifestyle." "That is the summary," I said, taking a sip of my black coffee. It tasted burnt, but the bitterness was grounding. "And you want to do what?" Harper asked. "Scream at them. Throw wine in your sister's face at Thanksgiving post. A sad TikTok." "No," I said. "I want to stop being the one who pays for it, not just financially. Harper, emotionally. I am tired of being the storage unit for their anxiety. I want them to see what they are doing." Harper finally opened the envelope. She scanned the spreadsheet, her eyes moving rapidly down the columns I had compiled. She paused at the HELOC withdrawals. She stopped at the recurring help transfers. She closed the folder and looked at me. "Listen to me closely. Aurelia, you have the data. You have the moral high ground. And if you go in there crying and waving these papers around, you will lose." I blinked. "What?" "If you confront them emotionally," Harper said, leaning forward, "they will weaponize your postpartum state. They will say you are hormonal. They will say you are jealous. They will say you are having a breakdown. They will rewrite the narrative so fast your head will spin. You will go from victim to aggressor in about 5 minutes." I knew she was right. I could already hear my father's voice. Aurelia is just sensitive right now. She is not thinking clearly. "So what do I do?" I asked. Harper took a pen from her purse and flipped the envelope over, writing on the back. "You need a campaign," she said. "Not a tantrum, a campaign. You need to treat this like a compliance audit gone wrong. You need 3 things: protection, narrative control, and consequences." She wrote the number 1, protection. "First," Harper said, "you secure your perimeter. You said your dad has your old banking info. You said your name is on some old family plans. Cut it, all of it. Freeze your credit. Change your passwords. If they are desperate enough to drain their house, they are desperate enough to use your identity. Desperate people do not have boundaries. Aurelia." I nodded. It made me sick to think about, but the logic held. She wrote the number 2, narrative. "Second," she continued, "you do not let them tell the story. You tell it, but you tell it with facts, not feelings. You do not say, 'You hurt me.' You say, 'You spent $112,000. You do not say, 'You are mean.' You say, 'You refuse to hold my son.' You make the facts so heavy that they cannot spin them." She wrote the number 3, consequences. "And finally," Harper tapped the table hard, "you set the cost, right now. Treating you like garbage is free. It costs them nothing to ignore your son. It costs them nothing to use you as a scapegoat. You have to make it expensive. If they want to treat you like an outsider, they lose the privileges of an insider. No access to your money, no access to your emotional labor, no access to your child." I looked at the list. It was cold. It was strategic. It was exactly what I needed. "But there is something else," Harper said, flipping the folder back open and pointing to the entry about the toys. "This entry here, the Range Rovers, Toy World Superstore." "Yeah," I said. "What about it?" "I know that chain," Harper said. "My nephew worked there one summer. They have a loophole in their policy. If you return an item within 48 hours claiming a defect, even if the box is open, they process a full refund to the original payment method. Here is the trick people buy high-ticket viral items to look rich. Post them on Instagram, and then return them immediately. They get the cash back before their other bills are due. It is basically using the store as a free short-term lender. She paused, her eyes narrowing. I do not follow, I said. Look at the date, Harper pointed. October 24th. Now look at this transfer from your parents on October 20th. $2,000 for medical bill. If Brielle used that cash to pay off a credit card, bought the toys to stage the photo, and then returned them. She keeps the cash your parents gave her, gets the social media clout, and cycles the money back into her debt. My jaw dropped. You think the toys were a prop, like literally a rental? I think your sister is running a shell game, Harper said. She is moving money from your parents to her image, and then shuffling the debt around. The toys are just inventory. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The cruelty of the real family post was not just about excluding Leo. It was marketing. It was Brielle proving to my parents that their investment was yielding happy grandchildren dividends. She had to post that photo to justify the cash infusion she had just received. My son was collateral damage in her fundraising campaign. Okay, I said, my voice hardening. So how do I end this? You need a stage, Harper said. Do not do it over email. Do not do it over the phone. You need witnesses. You need a moment where they cannot run away from the truth. I thought about the calendar. In 2 weeks, my parents were hosting a welcome winter brunch. It was a stupid tradition Diane had invented to show off her holiday decorations before Thanksgiving. The whole extended family would be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The same people she had tagged in that post. The welcome winter brunch, I said. November 12th. Perfect, Harper said. You go, you bring the baby, you act polite, you let them dig their hole, and then, she tapped the envelope, you fill it in. I went home and drafted a plan. I called it the 30-day close. Step 1. The invitation. I did not want to seem like the aggressor. I needed to be the gracious daughter who was trying to bridge the gap. I opened the group chat. It had been silent for 2 days. Aurelia. Hi everyone. Grant and I would love to bring Leo to the winter brunch. We think it is time for everyone to meet him properly. We are really looking forward to seeing the family. The response was immediate and predictable. Diane. Oh, we didn't think you would be up for it. Of course. We will make space. Brielle. Great, the kids are dying to see their cousin. I will bring the new car toys so they can play. She was bringing the props. Perfect. Step 2. The vault. I spent the next 3 days locking down my digital life. I called the 3 major credit bureaus and froze my files. I went through every shared account Amazon Prime, Netflix, the family cell phone plan, and removed my name. I called my bank and set up a verbal password for any inquiries. I found an old life insurance policy my parents had taken out on me when I was in college. I was still the insured, but they were the beneficiaries. I called the agent and asked what the process was to change it. He told me I could not change the owner, but I could update my own contact info so they stopped getting copies of my statements. I did it. Step 3. The evidence. I dug deeper into the toy scheme Harper had suggested. I could not prove the return without a receipt, but I could look for the pattern. I went back to the spreadsheet. I looked for refunds in my parents' account. There were none. But in the transaction history of the joint account my mother shared with Brielle, a discovery I had made only yesterday, a small emergency account I had forgotten existed. I saw it. October 27th, deposit $950. Source Toy World refund. Harper was right. She had bought the toys on the 24th. I posted the photo, returned them on the 27th. The real family moment that had broken my heart cost her nothing. It was a loaner. She had rented the cruelty for 3 days, cashed in the social capital, and then returned the merchandise. But she had kept the caption up. I sat in my office, the printed spreadsheet in my hand. It was shaking. This was so much worse than simple favoritism. This was a business model. My sister was monetizing my parents' insecurity, and my parents were liquidating their life to pay for the show. And I was the villain because I refused to play a supporting role. I looked at the date. November 12th was 10 days away. I was not going to scream. I was not going to cry. I was going to walk into that brunch with my son in one arm and this envelope in the other. "You do not want to hold him, Mom," I whispered to the empty air. "That is fine." I slid the refund confirmation into the envelope. "But you are going to hold this." The doorbell rang at 2 in the afternoon on Saturday. Sharp. It was the kind of ring that sounded less like a request for entry and more like a summons. I took a deep breath, adjusted Leo in my arms, and looked at Grant. He gave me a tight nod, his hand resting on the doorknob. We had agreed on the strategy: no shouting, no tears, just observation and limited engagement. My parents, Diane and Robert, walked in. They brought with them a gust of cold air and an aura of frantic, performative cheerfulness that immediately set my teeth on edge. "There they are," my mother exclaimed, her voice pitched an octave too high. She was wearing a new coat, I noticed, a wool blend with a fur collar that likely cost $300. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad," I said. Standing in the middle of the living room, I did not move toward them. My father was carrying a gift bag. It was small and flimsy, the kind you buy in the checkout aisle of a drugstore. He thrust it toward Grant. "For the little guy," he grunted. Grant took it and peeked inside. He pulled out a thin fleece blanket. It was gray, generic, and still had the plastic hanger attached to the top. I recognized the brand. It was from a discount store chain. Retail price perhaps $12. I thought about the $1,000 spent on the electric cars 3 days ago. I thought about the $950 refunded to my sister's secret account. "Thanks," Grant said, his voice flat. "We will use it." My mother walked over to where I was standing. She stopped exactly 3 feet away. It was a calculated distance close enough to look like she was engaged, far enough to avoid contact. She peered at Leo, who was wide awake and looking up with his dark, curious eyes. "He looks healthy," she said. It was the most neutral adjective she could have possibly chosen. "He is doing great," I said. I shifted Leo slightly, angling him toward her. It was a test. "Do you want to hold him, Mom? He is in a good mood." Diane recoiled. It was subtle, a quick tightening of her shoulders and a half step back. But I saw it. She pressed her hand to her chest, feigning a cough. "Oh, no, I couldn't," she said, shaking her head vigorously. "I have had this little tickle in my throat all morning. I would never forgive myself if I gave him germs. You know how fragile newborns are, especially, well, you know, especially IVF babies, especially babies who aren't real but germs," I repeated slowly. "That is strange, because I saw the photos Brielle posted yesterday. You were at the mall with her kids. You were sharing an ice cream cone with Noah." The room went deadly silent. My mother's smile faltered, the corners of her mouth twitching. "That is different," she snapped, recovering quickly. "Noah is 5. His immune system is developed. Leo is just... I am just trying to be responsible. Aurelia, why do you always have to pick everything apart?" "I am not picking things apart," I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly calm. "I am just observing the pattern." My father stepped in, using his head-of-the-household voice that usually made everyone shut up. "Aurelia, drop it. Your mother is tired. We drove 40 minutes to get here. Can we just sit down and have a nice visit without you interrogating us?" They sat on the sofa. I sat in the armchair opposite them. Grant stood behind me, a silent sentinel. "So," I said, smoothing the blanket over Leo's legs, "I wanted to ask you something. Mom, Aunt Janice messaged me." Diane's eyes darted to Robert, then back to me. "Janice, I haven't spoken to her in weeks." "Really?" I asked. "Because she said she saw you at the grocery store. She said you told her that Leo isn't a real family because of science. She said you told her he is basically adopted, and that is why you don't feel a connection." My mother's face turned a mottled shade of red. "Janice is a liar," she blurted out. "She has always been jealous of me. I never said that. She was very specific. Mom, she quoted you. Not the same bloodline. Those were the words." "You are hysterical," Diane said, waving her hand dismissively. She let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Listen to yourself. You are making up conspiracies. It is the hormones. Aurelia, I read about this. Postpartum psychosis or something. You are imagining enemies where there are none. Gaslighting. Stage 1. Deny the reality and attack the sanity of the accuser. I am not imagining anything, I said. And I am not psychotic. I am actually extremely lucid. You are upsetting your mother, my father growled. He leaned forward, pointing a finger at me. We come here to support you, to bring you a gift. And this is how you treat us. You attack us with gossip. This is exactly why we worry about you. Aurelia, you are not stable right now. I am perfectly stable, Dad, I said. I am just tired of the lies. I reached for my phone, which was resting on the side table. I unlocked it and opened the photo gallery. I had prepared a specific album. You say I am imagining things, I asked. I turned the screen toward them. First image, the Facebook post. They are a real family. Second image, the comment section where she agreed that blood is the only legacy. Third image, the screenshot of Aunt Janice's text message, time-stamped and clear. Is this a hallucination? I asked. Did the hormones Photoshop this caption? Mom. Diane stared at the screen. She did not look ashamed. She looked furious that she had been caught. You are obsessed, she hissed. Stalking my Facebook, taking screenshots. That is sick behavior. Aurelia, that is not normal. It is documentation, I corrected. Before she could respond, her phone began to ring. A loud, jarring FaceTime melody filled the tense room. She looked at the screen and her face softened instantly. It is Brielle, she announced, as if this was a wonderful surprise and not a coordinated intervention. She answered it and held the phone up so we could all see. Hi, Mommy. Brielle's face filled the screen. She was wearing perfect makeup and sitting in her car. I just wanted to check in. Are you at Aurelia's? Is everything okay? We are here, Diane sighed, casting a victimized look in my direction. But your sister is being difficult. She is accusing me of all sorts of things. Oh, Aurelia, Brielle said, her voice dripping with condescension. She looked at me through the tiny camera lens. Honey, please don't start drama. Mom has been so stressed lately. Her blood pressure is up. You need to be more considerate. I need to be considerate, I asked, looking at my sister's pixelated face. Brielle, you are the one who posted the photo of the cars. You are the one who helped her stage this whole real family narrative. I posted a picture of my kids being happy, Brielle protested. Why does everything have to be about you? You are so selfish. You have a new baby. You should be happy. Instead, you are counting my kids' toys. I am not counting toys, I said. I am counting the money. Excuse me, Brielle laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. What is that supposed to mean? The $500 cars, I said. Mom and Dad said they are broke. They denied me a loan for my medical bills, but they bought you those cars. They are gifts, Brielle screeched. Grandparents buy gifts. Get over it. I leaned forward. This was the moment. I had not planned to use the heavy ammunition today, but they were pushing me into a corner. I needed to fire a warning shot. So, the cars were gifts, I said, my voice dropping to a conversational volume. Just like the monthly transfer is a gift. Just like the down payment on your white SUV was a gift. Brielle stopped blinking. I don't know what you are talking about. I think you do, I said. And I think you know exactly where that money is coming from. Tell me, Brielle, how is the HELOC situation? The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than the silence when Diane had refused to hold the baby. My father stiffened. My mother lowered the phone slightly. On the screen, Brielle's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted sideways, panic flaring behind her false lashes. She didn't ask, "What is a HELOC?" She didn't say, "We don't have one." She froze. "What did you say?" my father asked. his voice low and dangerous. "The home equity line of credit," I said, looking directly at my father. "The one on the house you paid off 10 years ago. The one you are currently draining to fund Brielle's lifestyle. Does she know that you are selling the roof over your head so she can buy designer purses and fake toys?" You looked at my accounts," my father stammered. His face went pale. "You asked me to audit your accounts 6 months ago." "Dad," I reminded him, "you gave me access. You told me to find where the pennies were going. Well, I found them. They aren't pennies. They are thousands of dollars. And they are all going to the same place." "This is illegal," Brielle shouted from the phone. "Mom, hang up. She is hacking you. She is crazy." "It is not illegal to look at statements you authorized me to view," I said calmly. "But what is interesting is the timing. Every time you withdraw from the house equity, Brielle launches a new business, and then the business fails, and the money disappears." "That is enough," my mother shouted. She slammed her hand down on the armrest of the sofa. "How dare you? That is our money. We earned it, if we want to help your sister. That is our right. She needs us. She is trying to build a future." "She is not building a future," I said. "She is digging a hole and you are throwing your retirement in to fill it up." "It is none of your business," Diane yelled. "You are just jealous because we help her. You have always been jealous of Brielle. You are cold. Aurelia, you are cold and calculating, and that is why you don't understand what real family does. Real families help each other." "Helps." I stood up. Grant moved with me. "You think this is helping, you are enabling her to live a lie, and to pay for it. You cut me out. You devalue my son to justify why you can't afford him. We never said we couldn't afford him." "You didn't have to," I said. "The spreadsheet speaks for itself." "You and your damn spreadsheets," my father spat, standing up as well. He looked smaller than I remembered. He looked like a man who knew he was caught in a trap, but was too proud to admit it. "We are leaving. We did not come here to be insulted by our own daughter." "Fine," I said. "Leave, but listen to me very carefully." I looked at the phone, where Brielle was still watching, terrified. I looked at my mother, who was trembling with rage. I looked at my father, who was staring at the floor. "You keep talking about rights," I said. "You have the right to spend your money. You have the right to choose your favorite child. You have the right to pretend my son isn't blood." I took a step closer. "But I have rights too, and my right is to refuse to be your backup plan. I am not going to be the retirement home you crawl into when Brielle finishes spending your house. I am not going to be the safety net when this house of cards falls down." "We would never ask you for anything," Diane sneered. "We have Brielle. She takes care of us." "Does she?" I asked. "Or does she just take it?" I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The cold air rushed in again, cleansing the room of the suffocating perfume. "The winter brunch is in 2 weeks," I said. "I am still coming, and I am bringing Leo." "Do not bother," Diane snapped, clutching her purse. "If you are going to be like this, stay home." "No," I said firmly. "I am coming, because there are other people in this family besides the 3 of you. There are aunts, uncles, and cousins who have been told lies about me and my son. I am going to brunch, and we are going to finish this conversation like adults, with everyone watching." "You wouldn't dare," Brielle whispered from the phone. "Try me," I said. My parents walked out. My father didn't look back. My mother glared at me with a hatred that I used to fear. But now, strangely, I only felt pity for... She was defending a burning building. I closed the door. The latch clicked shut. The silence returned to the house, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was clear. Grant let out a long breath. "You asked about the HELOC." "I did," I said. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying it out loud. "They look terrified," Grant said. "They should be." I walked over to the window and watched their car back out of the driveway. They were arguing in the front seat. Because I didn't even tell them about the refund for the toys yet. I looked down at Leo. He had fallen asleep in my arms, completely unbothered by the storm that had just passed over his head. "They want a show," I whispered to him. "In 2 weeks, I am going to give them one." The morning after the confrontation in my living room, the silence in the house felt different. It was no longer the heavy, suffocating silence of grief or confusion. It was the sharp, clear silence of a command center before a strike. I had thrown my parents out. I had declared my intent to attend the winter brunch. Now, I had to ensure that when I walked into that lion's den in 2 weeks, I was wearing armor that no amount of gaslighting could pierce. I started with the digital administrative tasks that Harper had recommended. It was tedious work, unpicking the tangled knots of 34 years of being a dutiful daughter. I logged into the Verizon website to remove myself from the family data plan. For years, I had paid my share promptly on the first of the month, often covering the overage charges that Brielle racked up streaming movies on her iPad. As I clicked Remove Line, a warning popped up stating that the primary account holder would be notified. I clicked Confirm without a second of hesitation. Next came the car insurance bundle, then the emergency contact lists at my doctor's office. I was scrubbing my existence from their logistics, but it was when I logged into the credit monitoring portal that the temperature in my home office seemed to drop 10 degrees. I had frozen my credit immediately after my meeting with Harper, but I had access to the historical inquiries. I was scrolling through the log, looking for anything suspicious. When I saw it, it was a soft pull inquiry from a mid-tier credit card company. Dated 6 months ago, the status was listed as pre-approval sent. That was not unusual. I get junk mail all the time, but when I clicked on the details of the inquiry to see where the offer had been mailed, the address listed was not my home in the suburbs where I had lived for 4 years. The address was 1402 Maplewood Drive, my parents' house. I stared at the screen. Why would a credit card company send a pre-approval offer for me to my parents' house? I had updated my address with the bureaus years ago. The only reason an offer would go there was if someone had applied or started an application, using that address as the primary residence. I picked up my phone and called the credit card company's fraud department. "I am looking at an inquiry from April," I told the representative, my voice steady. "I see a pre-approval was sent to an address I do not live at. Was an application ever submitted?" The representative put me on hold for what felt like an eternity. When he came back, his tone was cautious. "Ms. Everhart, I cannot give you full details due to privacy policies since the application was not finalized. However, I can see that an application was initiated online using your social security number and that address. It was flagged for identity verification because the phone number provided did not match our records for you. The applicant abandoned the session when asked to upload a photo ID." I felt the blood drain from my face. Someone had tried to open a credit card in my name, using my parents' address, and had stopped only when the computer asked for a driver's license they did not have. "Can you tell me the phone number that was used?" I asked. "I can read you the last 4 digits," he said. 5922. I did not need to check my contacts list. I knew that number. It was the landline in my parents' kitchen. I hung up the phone and sat there, my hand trembling slightly. It was not a successful theft. No money had been taken, but the intent was there. 6 months ago, around the same time I was asking for a loan for IVF, someone in that house had tried to open a line of credit in my name. Was it my mother, my father, or was it Brielle, sitting at their kitchen table, desperate for cash? The suspicion led me back to the HELOC. I still had my father's banking login active on my secure browser. I knew it was risky to log in again, but I needed to know if my digital footprint was entangled in their mortgage. I navigated to the Loan Details tab of the Home Equity line of credit. I scanned the terms, the interest rate, and the principal balance, which was sickeningly high. Then I clicked on Authorized Contacts. There, right under Robert Everhart and Diane Everhart, was a third name, Aurelia Everhart. Secondary reference, emergency contact. I had never signed a paper for this loan. I had never agreed to be listed, but there I was, in the banking world. Being a reference on a loan does not make you liable for the debt, but it does something else. It strengthens the application. It tells the underwriter, "Look, we have a daughter with a high credit score and a stable job who is connected to this household. They had used my good name to help secure the loan that they were now using to bleed the estate dry. How did they have my information? How did they have my social security number handy enough to try for a credit card and list me on a loan? Then the memory hit me. It came rushing back with the force of a physical blow. 3 years ago, I was sitting in a cafe with Brielle. She was frantic, crying into her latte. She had told me that she was trying to get Noah into a prestigious private preschool that had a rigorous background check requirement for the entire extended family who might be authorized for pickups. "They are so strict, Aurelia," she had said, her eyes wide and teary. "They need to run a clearance on everyone. I need your social security number and a copy of your driver's license, just to prove you are a safe person to pick him up." I felt touched. I felt included. I thought, she wants me to be involved in Noah's life. I had written my social security number on a napkin. I had let her take a picture of my license. I was an idiot. There was no background check. There was no elite preschool. Noah went to the local public kindergarten the next year. She had harvested my data 3 years ago and kept it in her back pocket, waiting for a rainy day, and when the rain came, she tried to use me as an umbrella. The front door opened downstairs. Grant was home. I went down to meet him. He took one look at my face and dropped his gym bag. "What happened?" he asked. "Did they call?" "No," I said. "I found out why they need me to be the bad guy. I am not just the scapegoat. Grant, I am the backup credit profile." I laid it all out for him. The inquiry, the HELOC reference, the fake preschool story. Grant paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. "We need a lawyer. Aurelia, this is fraud. This is identity theft. We can send the police to their door tonight." "We could," I said, leaning against the counter. "And if we do that, what happens?" Diane cries. She says it was a misunderstanding. She says I gave her permission and I am lying now because I am hormonal, without a completed transaction. It is a he said, she said mess. I do not want to go to war with the police. I want to cut the cord so completely that they fall down because I am no longer holding them up. "So we just let them get away with trying to steal your identity?" Grant asked, his voice rising. "No," I said. "We use it. This is leverage. This is the reason I can demand a full audit of the estate. But we need to know why Brielle is so desperate. The HELOC money is gone. Grant, $100,000. Where did it go? She doesn't have a gambling problem. She doesn't do drugs. Where is the money?" Grant stopped pacing. He looked at me with a grim expression. "I talked to Mike today," he said. Mike was an old college buddy who worked in regional management for a major retail conglomerate. I asked him about the toys, the buy and return thing, and he said it is a classic move for people who are drowning in credit card debt but trying to maintain a credit utilization ratio. Grant explained, "You buy something big on a card that is near its limit. You return it, but you do not put the refund back on the card. You take store credit, or if you are lucky and have a debit receipt from a different transaction, you get cash. It is a way to float. It is called manufacturing spend." But he said something else. Grant paused, pouring himself a glass of water. He said people who do this usually have a lifestyle business they are trying to prop up, because if you look successful, people lend you more money. "A lifestyle business," I repeated. My phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up. It was a message from my cousin Emily. Emily was 22, a sweet girl who was currently in her senior year of college. We rarely spoke, but she followed me on Instagram. "Emily, hey Aurelia. I saw your story about the baby. He is so cute. Listen, I feel weird asking this, but do you know what is going on with Brielle's academy?" I frowned and typed back, "Aurelia." "What academy?" "Emily, the Boss Mom Wealth Academy. She DM'd me and a bunch of the other cousins 3 months ago. She said she was launching a mentorship program for passive income. She asked us to invest $500 for a pre-sale spot. She said the course was launching in September." My stomach turned over. "Aurelia." "Did the course launch, Emily?" "No, that is the thing. September came and went. She sent an email saying there were technical difficulties, Then she said she was rebranding. Now she is not answering my DMs. I don't care about the $500 that much. But Aunt Linda put in $2,000 for a VIP coaching tier. Linda is asking around. I stared at the phone. The pieces slammed together. The business launches I had seen on the timeline in part 4. The refunds in the bank account. The desperation. Brielle wasn't just living beyond her means. She was running a Ponzi scheme. Or at least, a very clumsy, very illegal version of one. She was collecting money from family and friends for services she never intended to deliver. When people asked for refunds, she didn't have the cash because she had spent it on balayage and luxury SUVs. So she went to Mom and Dad. My parents weren't just funding her lifestyle. They were funding her refunds. They were paying off angry relatives and friends to keep Brielle from being sued for fraud. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What?" Grant asked. "She is soliciting investments," I said, showing him the text. "She took money from Aunt Linda. She took money from the college cousins. She is selling a fake course." I quickly went to Brielle's Instagram. I scrolled past the pictures of the kids and found the promotional posts. They were vague, filled with buzzwords, manifest abundance, passive income warrior, slots filling fast, link in bio. I clicked the link in her bio. It led to a 404 not found page. I went to the Wayback Machine, an internet archive tool I used constantly at work. I pasted her URL. There it was, a snapshot from August, Boss Mom Wealth Academy, pre-order now, no refunds after 30 days. I took screenshots of everything, the broken link, the archived page, the texts from Emily. I looked at the bank transfer spreadsheet again. August 15th. Transfer from Dad to Brielle, $2,000. August 14th. Likely the day Aunt Linda asked for her money back. It was a cycle. Brielle would steal from Peter to pay Paul. And when she ran out of Peter's, my parents would sell a piece of their house to cover the difference. They were trapped if they stopped paying. Brielle would be exposed as a scammer. The perfect daughter with the perfect family would be revealed as a thief who stole from her own aunt. The shame would be unbearable for Diane. So they paid. And to justify the cost, to justify the sheer insanity of burning their own equity, they had to devalue me. If I was the good daughter, the contrast would be too painful. If I was successful and honest and self-sufficient, it highlighted just how broken Brielle was. They couldn't handle that comparison, so they made me the enemy. They decided I wasn't real family because real family participates in the lie. Real family helps hide the body. I was not just an outsider because of the IVF. I was an outsider because I was the auditor. They are terrified of me, I realized aloud. They aren't being mean because they hate me. They are being mean because they know that if I look too closely, I will see the crime. Grant looked at the pile of evidence on the kitchen island. "This is not just family drama anymore, Aurelia. This is actionable. Aunt Linda could sue her." "Yes," I said. "She could." I picked up the manila envelope. It was thick now. It contained the ledger of transfers, the HELOC data, the toy return confirmation, and now, the evidence of the Boss Mom scam. "Real family," I said, turning the words over in my mouth. It tasted like ash. "It isn't a belief system, Grant. It is a hostage situation. Mom and Dad are the hostages. Brielle is the captor, and I was supposed to be the collateral damage." I looked at the calendar on the fridge. The winter brunch was less than 2 weeks away. Aunt Linda would be there. Cousin Emily would be there. Brielle had invited them all, probably hoping that being in the same room with Nana and Pop-Pop would make them too polite to ask about their missing money. She was using the family gathering as a human shield. "She is counting on everyone being too polite to make a scene," I said. Grant smirked, a cold, hard expression. "She forgot who she invited." "She invited the sister she tried to erase," I said. "And she invited the risk and compliance officer." I put the phone down. The investigation was over. I had the who, the what, the where, and the how. I even had the why. All that was left was the delivery. I felt a strange sense of calm. I wasn't Aurelia, the hurt daughter, anymore. I wasn't Aurelia, the new mother struggling with hormones. I was the senior analyst, and I was about to deliver the final report. The office of Elena Vasquez, a civil litigation attorney recommended by a colleague at Crestview, smelled of lemon polish and expensive silence. It was a stark contrast to the chaotic, emotionally charged atmosphere of my parents' living room. Here, there were no guilt trips, no tears, and no mentions of real family. There was only the law. I sat in a leather chair, my hands folded over the manila envelope that had become my constant companion. Elena read through the printouts of the credit inquiry and the bank loan details where I was listed as a secondary reference. "Here is the good news," Elena said, taking off her reading glasses. "Being listed as a reference on a HELOC does not make you liable for the debt. They cannot garnish your wages if your parents default. However, the attempt to open a credit card in your name using their address, that is attempted identity theft. And listing you as a reference without your consent implies they are using your credit worthiness to bolster their application's optics. I do not want to put them in jail." "Elena," I said, "I just want to be untethered. I want to make sure that when this house of cards collapses, and it will collapse, I am not standing in the rubble." "Then we build a firewall," Elena said. "We draft a formal cease and desist regarding the use of your personal information. We notify the bank that holds the HELOC that you are not an authorized contact and demand your removal from the file. And you need to sever every single financial link you have with them, not just the big ones. The small ones, the shared Netflix password, the old joint checking account from college, everything." "The death by 1,000 cuts approach," I noted. "No," Elena corrected. "This is cauterization. It stops the bleeding." I spent the next 48 hours executing what I called the Great Unlinking. It was tedious, unglamorous work. It was not the dramatic courtroom showdowns you see in movies. It was sitting on hold with customer service representatives for 45 minutes at a time. I called the electric company. My name was still on the bill for my parents' house from a time 10 years ago when my father had forgotten to pay and the lights were cut off. So I had put it in my name to get them turned back on quickly. I had forgotten about it. I canceled the service authorization effective immediately. I logged into the streaming services. I saw profiles for Nana, Pop Pop, and Brielle. I changed the password and clicked Sign out of all devices. I called the bank that held the old student checking account my mother had opened with me when I was 16. There was $12 in it. I closed it. With every account I closed, I felt a phantom weight lift off my shoulders. I realized that for years, I had been keeping these lines open as a form of emotional currency. I thought that if I was helpful, if I was integrated into their infrastructure, they would have to love me. I was wrong. Being integrated just made it easier for them to extract resources. Once the logistical firewall was built, I sat down to write the email. Elena had advised me to keep it brief, factual, and devoid of emotion. "Do not give them a hook to hang an argument on," she had said. I typed subject financial independence and data privacy. "Dear Mom and Dad, effective immediately, I have removed myself from all shared accounts, subscriptions, and service agreements. I have also placed a freeze on my credit reports and notified the relevant bureaus regarding the unauthorized inquiry made from your address last April. Moving forward, I will not be co-signing, guaranteeing, or providing funds for any family expenses. Please ensure my name is removed from any banking or loan documents where it may have been listed as a reference without my consent. I am doing this to ensure there is no confusion regarding our separate financial households. I expect this boundary to be respected. Aurelia." I hit send. The response was not immediate. It took 3 hours. When it came, it was not an email. It was a phone call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. I was done with being yelled at in real time. I listened to the message 10 minutes later. Her voice was trembling, thick with that weaponized martyrdom she had perfected over decades. "Aurelia, I just saw your email. I cannot believe you are doing this to us. After everything we did for you, we raised you. We put a roof over your head. We paid for your braces. And now you treat us like criminals because of a credit card mistake. You are cold. Aurelia, you are punishing us because you are jealous of your sister. I hope you look at your own son and pray he never treats you the way you are treating me. I felt a pang in my chest, the old, conditioned reflex of guilt. We paid for your braces. It was the classic transaction. I owed them my autonomy because they had performed the basic duties of parenting in 1995. I texted back. I did not want to speak to her, but I needed to put this on the record. Aurelia. Raising a child is a responsibility. Mom, not alone. You do not get to cash me in now because you are short on funds. I am not punishing you. I am protecting myself. Then, my phone rang again. It was my father. Robert never called unless it was an emergency or a holiday. He preferred to let Diane handle the emotional labor, if he was calling. The water was rising. I stared at the screen. Dad calling. I answered. Hello, Dad. You cut the electric bill, he said. No greeting. His voice sounded tight, strained. I removed my name from the liability, I corrected. You just need to call them and put it in your name. It takes 10 minutes. I cannot put it in my name, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. My credit score. It took a hit recently. They want a deposit. $300. $300. My father. A man who had worked in middle management for 30 years. A man who lived in a paid-off house was panicking over a $300 deposit. Dad, I said, keeping my voice level. You have a pension. You have Social Security. Why is $300 a crisis? Cash flow is tight this month, he muttered. Can you turn it back on? I will pay you back on the 1st, I promise. No, I said. Aurelia, please, he said, and then the mask slipped. The head of household bravado crumbled. If we do not keep the utilities on, the bank gets suspicious, the HELOC. There are conditions. We have to maintain the property. If you are worried about the bank, I said, seizing the opening, then tell me the truth. Where's the money going? Dad? You pulled $100,000 out of the house. You have a pension. Where is it? It is an investment, he said quickly, too quickly. Invested in what? I asked. In Brielle's Boss Mom Academy, the one that does not exist. It exists, he snapped. She is building it. These things take time. Aurelia, you don't understand entrepreneurship. You just collect a paycheck. Brielle is building an empire. She just needs a runway. She is not building an empire, I said. She is paying off refunds. I know about Aunt Linda. I know about the cousins. There was silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. She told you, he whispered. No, I said. Linda told the internet. Dad, Brielle is running a Ponzi scheme. She is taking money for a service she never delivers. And when people demand it back, you bail her out with your home equity. She has a contract coming, Robert said. His voice took on a desperate, pleading quality that chilled me to the bone. It was the voice of a gambler convinced that the next spin of the wheel would fix everything. She is signing a deal with a distributor next week, a big wellness brand. She just needs to clear the old debt so her record is clean for the background check. Once the contract is signed, she pays us back. She pays off the house. She pays everyone. There is no contract, I said softly. Dad, listen to me. There is no distributor. She is lying to you to keep the money flowing. You don't know that, he shouted. You want her to fail. You have always wanted her to fail, so you can look like the perfect one. If we stop helping her now, right before the finish line, we lose everything, the house, the reputation, everything. You are going to lose the house anyway, I said. The only difference is whether you lose it now, or you lose it in 6 months when the equity is completely gone and you are living in my guest room, which, by the way, is not happening. You wouldn't let us starve, he said. It was not a question. It was a dare. I won't let you starve, I said, but I won't pay for Brielle's delusions. If you want to sell the house and downsize, I will help you move. but I will not give you 1 single cent to hand to my sister." "She needs time," he whispered. "She just needs a little more time." He hung up. I put the phone down on the kitchen counter. My hand was shaking. It was worse than I thought. They weren't just enabling her. They were co-conspirators in a fantasy. They had bought into the lie so deeply that exposing Brielle meant exposing their own foolishness. They had bet the farm literally on a horse that had already died. I walked back into my office and looked at the stack of papers. I had proof of the scams. I had proof of the fake business. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the website of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Then I opened the site for the Federal Trade Commission. I could file a report. I had enough evidence to trigger an investigation into Boss Mom Wealth Academy. If I did, Brielle would be shut down. She might face fines. She might even face legal action from the people she had defrauded. It would destroy her, and it would destroy my parents, who were financially legally entangled with her. I hovered my mouse over the File a Complaint button. This was the moral chess match. If I stayed silent, she would keep scamming people. She would take money from more cousins, more friends, maybe even strangers on the internet who couldn't afford to lose $500. If I did nothing, I was complicit by silence. But if I filed the report, I was the one dropping the nuke on the family. Diane would be right. I would be the one who ruined everything. I thought about Aunt Linda. I thought about Cousin Emily, a student working part-time jobs, who had lost $500 to my sister's vanity project. "Real families protect each other," my mother had said, "but who protects the rest of the world from my family?" I decided not to file the report, not today. I printed the complaint forms. I filled them out with all of Brielle's information, the dates, the amounts, and the fraudulent claims. I attached the screenshots of the no refunds policy and the archived website. I put the unsigned, unfiled forms into the manila envelope. This was not a weapon I wanted to fire from a distance. This was the checkmate move. I needed them to see it. I needed Brielle to look at these papers and realize that her runway had run out. I walked to the front door of my house and locked the deadbolt. Then I engaged the security chain. For the first time in my life, the locked door didn't feel like I was shutting myself in. It felt like I was keeping the chaos out. My father said the house might be sold. My mother said I was cold. They were flailing, trying to grab onto anything that would keep them afloat. But I was not a life raft. I was on a rocky shore, and if they crashed against me, that was their choice. I went upstairs to the nursery. Leo was awake, kicking his legs in the air. "We are going to be okay," I told him. "We are going to be a boring family, the family that pays its bills and tells the truth." I picked him up. He felt solid, real. The welcome winter brunch was in 6 days. My father thought the threat of losing the house would break me. He thought I would rush in with my checkbook to save the family honor. He had no idea that I was done saving a reputation that had been bought with stolen money. I was bringing the envelope, and inside that envelope was the end of the Everhart family mythology. The driveway of my parents' house in the Chicago suburbs was packed with cars. It was the second Sunday of November, the date of the annual Welcome Winter Brunch. The lawn was already decorated with plastic reindeer and oversized silver baubles, a desperate attempt to project a festive abundance that I now knew was financed by a line of credit that was eating the house from the inside out. Grant parked our car down the street. He turned off the engine and looked at me. In the back seat, Leo was cooing softly, wearing a simple blue onesie. "You ready?" Grant asked. "Once we walk in there, we cannot unring the bell." "The bell was rung when she posted that photo," I said, clutching the thick manila envelope in my lap. "Today, we just answered the door." We walked up the driveway. I could hear the murmur of voices and the clinking of glass from inside. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear, but from the cold, hard adrenaline of a diver standing on the edge of a cliff. We entered without knocking. The house was warm and smelled of cinnamon and roasting ham. The living room was crowded. I counted at least 20 people. Aunt Janice was there by the fireplace. Aunt Linda was near the buffet table. Cousin Emily was sitting on the stairs. And in the center of the room, On the plush beige sofa sat my mother, Diane. She was beaming. On her lap sat Brielle's youngest child, my 4-year-old niece. Diane was bouncing her on her knee, laughing loudly at something the child had said. Brielle stood next to them, holding a glass of champagne, looking radiant and triumphant in a white cashmere sweater. The tableau was perfect. The loving grandmother, the golden daughter, the adored grandchildren. Then, Diane looked up and saw me. Her smile did not just fade, it evaporated. Her hands froze on my niece's waist. The room, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure, went quiet. The conversations died down, one by one, until the only sound was the crackling of the fire and the low hum of the refrigerator. "Aurelia," Diane said. Her voice was tight, lacking any warmth. "You came. We said we would," I said, stepping fully into the room. Grant stood beside me, holding the diaper bag like a shield. I walked toward the sofa. I did not rush. I moved with the deliberate pace of an auditor walking onto a factory floor. When I was 3 feet away, I stopped. I shifted Leo in my arms so his face was clearly visible to everyone in the room. "Hi, Mom," I said. "Hi, Brielle." Diane did not stand up to greet me. She did not reach out her arms. She actually leaned back, pulling my niece tighter against her chest, as if my son were contagious. "Well," Diane said, looking at a spot somewhere over my left shoulder. "There he is. Do you want to say hello to your grandson?" I asked. I kept my voice soft, polite. I offered Leo to her, just slightly. "He has been smiling all morning." Diane flinched. She looked at the relatives watching her Aunt Janice, Aunt Linda, the cousins. She forced a strained, pained smile. "Oh, honey, I would love to," she lied, her voice pitching up. "But I am not used to holding him. You know, every baby is different. I have just got such a rhythm with Brielle's kids. I wouldn't want to make him cry." It was a clumsy excuse. She had held Brielle's children from the moment they were born. She had held the neighbor's baby last month. Brielle stepped in immediately, sensing the awkwardness. She set her champagne glass down with a sharp clink. "It is okay, Mom," Brielle announced, her voice projecting to the back of the room. "Aurelia understands. Honestly, everyone. Aurelia has been having a really hard time lately. Postpartum hormones are no joke. She has been very sensitive about everything. We are just trying to give her space so she doesn't get overwhelmed." She looked at me with a pitying, patronizing expression. "Why don't you go sit in the den, Aurelia? It is quieter there. Less stimulation for you." It was a masterclass in public humiliation. She was framing my exclusion as an act of mercy. She was telling the entire family that I was mentally fragile, and that Diane's coldness was actually a protective measure. I felt Grant stiffen beside me, ready to snap. I touched his arm lightly. "Wait. I am fine, Brielle," I said, smiling pleasantly. "Actually, I feel clearer than I have in years." I reached into the diaper bag. "We brought gifts for the kids." I pulled out 2 small, wrapped boxes. They were simple puzzles, costing maybe $15 each. I handed them to Brielle's children, who tore them open immediately. "Thank you, Aunt Aurelia," my nephew yelled. "You are welcome," I said. I sat down on the ottoman, right in the center of the circle. I did not retreat to the den. I sat there, holding my son, and let the visual sink in. Diane holding Brielle's child, me holding mine. The gap between us was only 3 feet, but it looked like an ocean. The party tried to resume. People picked up their drinks, but the tension was too thick. Everyone had seen the snub. Aunt Janice, bless her neutral heart, could not take it anymore. She walked over, holding a plate of appetizers. She looked at Diane, then at me, then back at Diane. "Diane," Janice said, her brow furrowed. "He is beautiful. Why on earth aren't you holding him? You have been talking about wanting more grandkids for 10 years. Diane's face flushed. She laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. "Oh, Janice, stop. I told you, It is just complicated. What is complicated? Janice pressed. He is a baby. It is the dynamic, Diane stammered. She looked at Brielle for help, but Brielle was busy checking her phone. You know how it is. With the treatments, it is just hard to bond when it feels so clinical. We are just focusing on the connections that feel natural right now, the real connections. She said it. She tried to soften it. She tried to code it, but she said it. Real connections. The room went silent again. This time, it was a shocked silence. Cousin Emily looked up from her phone. Aunt Linda lowered her fork. Real connections, I repeated. My voice was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. Is that the new term for it? Mom, last week, you called it real family. I never said that, Diane snapped, her eyes darting around the room, assessing the damage. You are twisting my words again. See, this is what I mean about hormones. She is imagining insults. Am I? I asked. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I did not scroll through photos. I opened the voicemail app. I received a voicemail from you 3 days ago. Mom, I said, after I emailed you about separating our finances, do you remember what you said? Aurelia, put that away. My father, Robert, barked from the doorway of the kitchen. He started moving toward me. This is a party. Do not do this. I pressed play. I turned the volume all the way up. My mother's voice, tinny but unmistakable, cut through the room. And now you treat us like criminals because of a credit card mistake. You are cold. Aurelia, I hope you look at your own son and pray he never treats you the way you are treating me. I paused it. Then I played the second clip, the one from the inadvertent recording I had made when I called her back, and she thought she had hung up, but the line was still open for 3 seconds while she spoke to Dad. It is better this way. Robert, if she cuts us off, we do not have to pretend about the baby. It is not the same bloodline anyway. At least Brielle's kids are actually ours. The recording ended with a sharp click. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that follows a gunshot. Diane's face went white, then purple. You recorded me, she screeched. That is illegal. You are a spy. You come into my house and spy on me. You said my son isn't yours, I said. Standing up, I was shaking, but my voice was rock steady. In front of everyone here, you said he isn't blood. Because he isn't, Diane shouted. Abandoning the pretense, she stood up, dumping my niece off her lap. You used a tube. You used a Petri dish. It is unnatural. I tried to be nice about it, but you push and push. Brielle gave us natural grandchildren. That is the bond. That is the truth. That is not the truth, I said. That is the excuse. Brielle stepped forward, stepping between me and our mother. Her face was twisted in a sneer. Oh my God, Aurelia, stop acting like a victim. This isn't about the baby. You are just jealous because Mom and Dad bought my kids the Range Rovers. You are mad because they spent money on us and not you. You are so petty. You are counting pennies while we are trying to be a family. It is a $500 toy. Diane latched onto the narrative. That is what this is. She is jealous of the toys. She has been auditing us, checking price tags. Yes, I said. I have been auditing you. I reached into the envelope. I pulled out the stack of papers. It was thick. It was heavy. I walked over to the coffee table in the center of the room. I cleared away a tray of deviled eggs and slapped the papers down. The sound echoed like a judge's gavel. It is not about the toys, Brielle, I said. I know you returned the toys. I saw the refund hit the joint account on October 27th. $950. Brielle's mouth fell open. What? Cousin Emily asked from the stairs. She returned them. She bought them for the photo, I said, turning to address the room. She posted the picture to prove they were a real family, so that Mom and Dad would feel good about the money they had just given her. Then she returned them to pay off her credit card. You are lying, Brielle screamed. Shut up. Shut up. I am not lying, I said. It is all here. The refund. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. I pointed to the spreadsheet on top of the pile. $112,000, I said clearly. My father reached the table. He grabbed the papers. Aurelia, stop. I command you to stop. Grant stepped in front of him. Grant was 6'2" and broad-shouldered. He did not touch my father, but he created a wall that Robert could not pass. Let her finish, Robert. $112,000, I repeated. That is how much Mom and Dad have transferred to Brielle in the last 3 years, while they told me they were broke, while they refused to help me with medical bills, while they told me I had to be strong. So what? Diane yelled. It is our money, we can spend it how we want. It is not your money anymore, Mom, I shouted back, finally letting the anger break through the surface. It is the house's money, you drained the equity, you took out a HELOC, you are selling the roof over your head to fund Brielle's fake life. I turned to Aunt Linda. Linda, did you get your $2,000 back from the Boss Mom Academy? Linda's eyes went wide. She stood up slowly. How do you know about that? Because Brielle used Dad's HELOC withdrawal to pay you back, I said. And Emily, your $500 that went to a Sephora bill. You told me the course was delayed, Linda said, turning to Brielle. Her voice was trembling with rage. You said the money was in an escrow account for the platform development. It wasn't, I said. There is no platform. There is no academy. There is just a Ponzi scheme where Mom and Dad are the bank of last resort. It is a lie, Brielle shrieked. She looked around the room, her eyes wild. She is jealous. She is making it up. I have a contract. I have a distributor. Show us the contract. Brielle, I said, show us the distributor, or should I show them the letter from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that I prepared? My father slammed his hand on the table. Enough. The room froze. Robert was breathing hard, his face gray. He looked at the relatives staring at him. He looked at Linda, who looked ready to call a lawyer. He looked at Diane, who was shrinking into the sofa. This is a private family matter, Robert wheezed. Everyone, please, this is a misunderstanding. It is not a misunderstanding, Robert, Aunt Janice said, her voice cold. You told me you couldn't come to my husband's retirement party because travel was too expensive. But you gave Brielle $100,000. And you insulted Aurelia's baby, Cousin Emily added, standing up. You said he wasn't blood. That is messed up, Aunt Diane. It is not, Diane stammered. You don't understand. We understand perfectly, I said. I picked up the empty envelope. I left the papers on the table, the ledger, the timeline, the proof of the theft. You needed me to be the outsider, I said to my mother. Because if I was inside, I would have stopped you. You needed to believe my son wasn't real, because if he was real, you would have to admit that you stole his inheritance to pay for Brielle's scams. We did it for the family, my mother cried, tears finally streaming down her face, but they were tears of self-pity, not remorse. We just wanted everyone to be okay. Brielle needed help. You didn't need help. You were always fine. I was fine because you forced me to be, I said. And now, I am fine enough to walk away. I turned to Grant. Get the diaper bag. We are leaving. You can't leave, Brielle screamed. She lunged toward the table, grabbing the papers. You ruined everything. You ruined Christmas. You ruined my reputation. Your reputation was ruined when you stole from your cousin, I said calmly. I walked toward the door. The relatives parted like the Red Sea. No one looked at Diane. No one looked at Brielle. They looked at the papers on the table. Aurelia, my father called out. His voice was broken. If you walk out that door, if you leave us like this... I stopped. I turned back one last time. I am not leaving you, Dad, I said. I am unenabling you. I am giving you the one thing you actually need, consequences. I looked at the room full of stunned relatives. I am going home, I announced. I have one more file to send out tonight. It is the final accounting. If anyone wants to know where their investments in Brielle really went, check your email in 2 hours. No, Brielle gasped. Yes, I said, because tomorrow they are going to try to tell you I am crazy. They are going to tell you I am having a breakdown. So I'm going to send the receipts tonight. The truth travels faster than a lie. If you have the tracking numbers. I opened the door. The cold winter air hit my face, but it felt like freedom. Goodbye, Mom, I said. You don't have to worry about holding Leo anymore. He is heavy, and you have enough weight to carry. I walked out, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look back to see if they were following. I knew they weren't. They were too busy staring at the wreckage of the lie they had built. The stack of papers sat on the coffee table like a bomb that had already detonated, leaving the room ringing in the aftermath. Aunt Linda was the first to reach for them. Her hands, usually steady from years of knitting, were trembling as she picked up the top sheet. It was the timeline I had titled The Ledger. The room watched her. Brielle was breathing in shallow, panicked gasps, her eyes darting between her husband, who looked confused, and our parents, who looked defeated. August 14th, Aunt Linda read aloud, her voice shaking. Transfer from Robert Everhart to Brielle Everhart, $2,000, memo, consultant fee. She looked up, locking eyes with my sister. That was the day you told me the refund for the VIP coaching tier was processed. You sent me a screenshot of a transaction confirmation. You said it came from your business account. It did? Brielle shrieked, her voice cracking. I moved the money. It is just accounting. You don't understand how cash flow works. I understand how theft works, I said, stepping forward. And so does everyone else in this room now. I looked at my cousins, at my aunts, at the neighbors who had been invited to witness the spectacle of the perfect family. You want to know why Mom and Dad are broke? I asked. You want to know why they couldn't afford a baby shower gift for my son, but bought $500 cars for Brielle's kids? It is because they are not just funding a lifestyle. They are funding a cover-up. I pointed to the second page of the document. $112,000, I said, enunciating every syllable. That is the total amount transferred from Mom and Dad to Brielle in the last 36 months, but it is not just cash from their savings. Look at the column on the right. Cousin Emily leaned over Linda's shoulder. HELOC, she read. Home equity, line of credit. That is right, I said. They mortgaged this house, the house we are standing in. They took the equity they spent 30 years building and liquidated it. And for what? To pay off the people Brielle scammed. She didn't scam anyone, Robert shouted, finally finding his voice. He stood up, his face red and swollen. She is an entrepreneur. Businesses have ups and downs. We were investing in her potential. You were paying hush money, Dad, I countered. I looked at the dates. Every single large withdrawal corresponds to a threat. August 4th, Aunt Linda asks for her money back. August 5th, you pull $2,000 from the house. June 12th, a group of mothers from the Boss Mom Facebook group threatened to report Brielle for taking pre-orders for a yoga retreat that never happened. June 13th, you transferred $5,000 to Brielle to issue refunds. I turned to Brielle. She had shrunk back against the fireplace, looking small and vicious. You are running a Ponzi scheme. Brielle, you take money for services you don't deliver. You spend it on luxury cars and designer clothes to keep up the appearance of being a wealthy influencer. And when people come for their money, you go to Mom and Dad, cry about how stressful it is, and they bail you out to save the family reputation. I was going to pay them back. Brielle sobbed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I have a contract coming. The distributor is real. There is no distributor, I said softly. I checked the corporate registry you listed on your website. It doesn't exist. It is a shell LLC registered to your husband's gym address. Her husband, standing by the punch bowl, went pale. Wait, he said. You told me that LLC was for tax write-offs for the car. She lied to you too, I said, just like she lied to Mom. I turned my attention to Diane. She was sitting on the sofa, clutching a throw pillow to her chest, looking like a child who had been caught stealing candy. But I wasn't done. The financial truth was out. But the emotional truth, the reason she had rejected my son, was still festering. Mom, I said, you told everyone Leo wasn't real family. You told Aunt Janice he wasn't blood because of the IVF. You said you couldn't bond with him. Diane looked down, refusing to meet my eyes. Why? I asked. You know biology. You know it is my egg and Grant's sperm. You know he is your grandson. So why did you say that? Diane didn't answer. It wasn't your idea, was it? I asked, looking at Brielle. Diane let out a sob, a harsh, broken sound. She told me, Diane whispered. What? I stepped closer. What did she tell you? Mom. Diane looked up, her eyes swimming in tears. Brielle said, she said that babies born that way. They don't have souls. The room gasped, a collective, horrified intake of breath. She said it changes their temperament. Diane rushed on, the words tumbling out as if she were vomiting poison. She sent me articles from these holistic websites. She said IVF babies are cold, that they don't connect with their ancestors. She said if I got too close to him, it would disrupt the energy of the natural grandchildren. She said, Diane looked at Brielle, her face twisting in anguish. She said if I accepted Leo, I was betraying the purity of her kids. I felt Grant's hand on my back, steadying me. I felt like I might throw up. It wasn't just prejudice. It was a calculated campaign of dehumanization. Brielle knew that if my parents fell in love with Leo, the money might get split. She knew that if I was accepted as an equal, her monopoly on the family bank account would end. So she had to make my son a monster. She had to make him soulless to keep her own children and her own bank account sacred. You monster, Aunt Janice whispered, looking at Brielle. You told your mother that her grandson didn't have a soul to keep the money flowing. I was protecting her, Brielle screamed, her face ugly with desperation. Aurelia is a corporate robot. She doesn't need us. She has her own money. Why should she get the love too? I needed the support I needed to be the favorite. It is not fair. So, the $500 toys, Cousin Emily said, her voice dripping with disgust. The real family post. Was it all just marketing? You made Grandma hate a baby so you could keep buying Range Rovers. I returned the Range Rovers, Brielle yelled, as if that made it better. Exactly, I said. You returned the toys, but you couldn't return the damage you did to my son. Robert stood up again. He looked at the shattered faces of his family. He looked at the spreadsheet that proved he was broke. He realized the game was over, but he tried one last, desperate gambit. Aurelia, he said, walking toward me. His voice was pleading, low. Okay. You made your point. We messed up. We listened to Brielle too much. But look at this mess. The HELOC is due. The bank is calling. If we don't make a payment by Friday, they start foreclosure proceedings. He reached out, trying to take my hand. I pulled back. You have savings, Aurelia, he said. You and Grant. You are successful. You could fix this. Just write a check, pay off the line of credit. We will sell the house later. I promise. But save us the embarrassment of foreclosure. If you do this, if you help us this one last time, we can be a family again. We will accept Leo. We will make it right. I stared at him. He was actually doing it. He was selling my son's acceptance back to me. He was putting a price tag on his love, $112,000. You want me to buy my way back in? I asked. You want me to pay off the debt Brielle created, just so you will graciously agree to hold my son? It is not like that, Robert said, sweating. It is a family helping family. That is what real family does. We protect each other from the world. No, I said. Real families don't demand a ransom for love. I reached into the diaper bag one last time. I pulled out a crisp, white envelope. It wasn't money. It was the letter Elena had drafted for me. I handed it to Robert. "This is not a check, Dad," I said. "This is a formal notice from my attorney." Robert froze, holding the envelope like it was burning his fingers. "It states that if my name, my social security number, or my address is used on any financial document, loan application, or credit inquiry ever again, I will file immediate criminal charges for identity fraud," I said. "It also states that I am not liable for the HELOC, and I will not be contributing a single cent to its repayment." "You would let us lose the house," Diane wailed from the sofa. "Your childhood home. You lost the house 3 years ago." "Mom," I said, "you lost it the day you decided Brielle's lies were worth more than my truth. You just haven't moved out yet." I looked at Brielle. She was sobbing into her hands, but no one was comforting her. Her husband had walked away to the kitchen. The aunts were staring at the floor. "And you," I said to my sister, "you can keep the real family title. You earned it. You cost them everything. I hope it was worth it." I turned to the room, to the aunts, the uncles, the cousins who had watched this tragedy unfold. "I am sorry to ruin the party," I said, "but I couldn't let you invest in a company that doesn't exist. If anyone gave Brielle money for a class or a program, I suggest you ask for it back now, before the bank takes what is left." I signaled to Grant. He picked up the diaper bag. He put his arm around my waist, solid and warm. "Aurelia, wait." Diane stood up. She took a step toward me. She looked at Leo, really looked at him. For the first time, she saw the dark eyes that matched her own father's. She saw the innocent face of a child she had discarded because of a lie. He looks like your grandfather," she whispered. Her voice cracked with sudden, crushing regret. Can I just—" She reached out a hand, a trembling, desperate hand. I looked at her hand. Then I looked at her face. 10 minutes ago, I might have felt triumph. Now, I just feel exhausted and a profound, quiet clarity. "No, Mom," I said gently. I stepped back, out of her reach. "You don't get to hold him just because the other option turned out to be a fraud," I said. "He is not a consolation prize, and he is not a bank deposit. Please," she wept. "We can fix this." "You can fix your finances," I said. "You can sell the house. You can go to therapy, but you cannot fix this. Not today, maybe not ever." I walked to the door. I opened it, letting the winter wind rush in, chasing away the scent of cinnamon and deception. "Gia din không phải nơi ai đó được quyền định nghĩa con tôi là không that. Nhưng vấn đề tin của tôi, như nghĩa vụ thật," I said, repeating the thought that had been my mantra for weeks, though I spoke it in English for them. Family is not a place where someone gets to define my son as not real, but still demands my money as a real obligation. I stepped onto the porch. Grant followed, closing the door firmly behind us. As we walked down the driveway, past the plastic reindeer and the oversized ornaments that they couldn't afford, I heard the sound of arguing erupting from inside the house. I heard Brielle screaming. I heard Robert shouting, but it sounded far away, muffled, like noise from a television in another room. I looked down at Leo. He was asleep, warm and safe against my chest. "You are real," I whispered to him. "You are the most real thing in the world." We reached our car. I buckled him into his car seat. I got into the passenger side and watched the house one last time as Grant started the engine. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. My mother didn't need to hold my son, but she was finally, inescapably, holding the truth, and my son would grow up without ever having to beg anyone to acknowledge his existence. We drove away, leaving the real family to settle their tab. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I know family drama can be heavy, but sometimes setting boundaries is the only way to survive. I would love to hear from you guys. Where are you listening from today? Are you listening while driving, cooking, or maybe just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading your stories. And please, If you enjoyed this story and want to support the channel, make sure to subscribe to Veronica Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash that hype button so this story can reach more people who might need the courage to stand up for themselves. See you in the next video.